So hey, how you doing? Hope all's well. Yeah, off to a really late start. So what I'm gonna do probably about 15 minutes. I'm going to read a little bit, and and then after that, I have one new video that I'm working on. Hopefully, I'll be able to work on it tonight. I have one project kind of tied to Elvish that I'm working on that I actually completed. I completed one of those, and so it's a project kind of tied to generative AI. So I'm working on something with Elvish. I actually completed that last night, and I think I'm going to do something else with Elvish. Probably not a video, but these are products that maybe people will be interested in. That I'll show a little bit later. So let's see. Last time I was reading a little bit, and let's go ahead and jump in. And so, hello, whoever was watching and then dipped. So let me see. Okay. I think, what else when I think about it? I think some of the stuff that I was thinking about doing. So sometimes what happens and is that I'll start doing stuff. So for example, like one series I was following like low key, and then I kind of stopped following it. So like what happens to me sometimes is if I don't really like the writing, then I just kind of stop watching it. You know what I mean? Like, so even if I'm like two shows in, I'll just like drop it. So there's a lot of these different series that I've started to watch them, and then I don't know, the writing just does something to me, and I just let it go. So let's see. Here we go. So I think last time I got pretty far, and not really sure where I stopped. Let's see, where did I stop last time? So I think I got to the point where let me see. I think I got to this point where they started talking about Olmo, but it's okay. It's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and start from this part. So now to water had that Ainu, whom the elves called Olmo, turned his thought, and almost deeply was he instructed by Iluvatar in music. But of the airs and winds Manwë most had pondered, who is the noblest of the Ainur. Of the fabric of earth had Ale thought, to whom Iluvatar had given skill and knowledge scarce less than to Melkor. But the delight and pride of Ale is in the deed of making and in the thing made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery. Wherefore he gives and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit just to double check. So yeah, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and go back up. So now the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, the firstborn and the followers, and amid all the splendors of the world, its vast halls and spaces and its wheeling fires, Iluvatar chose a place for their habitation in the deeps of time and in the midst of the innumerable stars. And this habitation might seem a little thing to those who consider only the majesty of the Ainur, and not their terrible sharpness, as who should take the whole field of Arda for the foundation of a pillar, and so raise it until the cone of its summit were more bitter than a needle? Or who consider only the immeasurable vastness of the world, which still the Ainur are shaping, and not the minute precision to which they shape all things therein? But when the Ainur had beheld this habitation in a vision, and had seen the children of Iluvatar arise therein, then many of the most mighty among them bent all their thought and their desire towards that place. And of these Melkor was a chief, even as he was in the beginning the greatest of the Ainur who took part in the music. And he feigned even to himself at first that he desired to go thither and order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar, controlling the turmoils of the heat and the cold that had come to pass through him. But he desired rather to subdue to his will both elves and men, envying the gifts with which Iluvatar promised to endow them. And he wished himself to have subjects and servants, and to be called Lord. Subjects and servants, and to be called Lord, and to be master over other wills. But the other Ainur looked upon this habitation set within the vast spaces of the world, which the elves called Arda, the earth, and their hearts rejoiced in light, and their eyes, beholding many colors, were filled with gladness. But because of the roaring of the sea, they felt a great unquiet, and they observed the winds in the air, and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron and stone and silver and gold and many substances. But of all these, water they most greatly praised, and gold. And it is said that Eldar, that in water these lives, yet the echo of the music of the Ainur more than in any substance else that is in this earth. And many of the children of Iluvatar hearkened, still unsated, to the voices of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. Now to water had that Ainu, whom the elves called Olmo, turned his thought. And of all mostly deeply was he instructed by Iluvatar in music. But of the airs and winds Manwë most had pondered, who is the noblest of the Ainur. Of the fabric of earth had Aule thought, to whom Iluvatar had given skill and knowledge scarce less than to Melkor. But the delight and pride of Aule is in the deed of making, and in the thing made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery. Wherefore he gives and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. And Iluvatar spoke to Elmo, and said, Seest thou not how here in this little realm, in the deeps of time, Melkor hath made war upon thy province? He had bethought him of bitter cold and moderate, and yet had not destroyed the beauty of thy fountains, nor of thy clear pools. Behold the snow and the cunning work of frost. Melkor hath devised heats and fire without restraint, and hath not dried up thy desire, nor utterly quelled the music of the sea. Behold rather the height and glory of the clouds and the ever-changing mists, and listen to the fall of rain upon the earth. And in these clouds thou art drawn nearer to Manwë thy friend, whom thou lovest. Then Olmo answered, Truly water is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived the snowflake, nor in all my music was contained the falling of the rain. I will seek Manwë, that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight. And Manwë and Elmo have from the beginning been allied, and in all things have served most faithfully the purpose of Iluvatar. And even as Olmo spoke, and while the Ainur were yet gazing upon this vision, it was taken away and hidden from their sight. And it seemed to them that in that moment they perceived a new thing, darkness which they had not known before except in thought. But they had become enamored of the beauty of the vision, and engrossed in the unfolding of the world which came there to being. And their minds were filled with it. For the history was incomplete, and the circles of time not full wrought, when the vision was taken away. And some have said that the vision ceased ere the fulfillment of the dominion of men and the fading of the firstborn. Wherefore, though the music is over all, the Valar had not seen as with sight the later ages of the ending of the world. Then there was unrest among the Ainur, but Iluvatar called to them and said, I know the desire of your minds, that what ye have seen should verily be not, only in your thought, but even as ye yourselves are, and yet other. Therefore I say, Ea, let these things be, and I will send forth into the void of flame, imperishable, and it shall be at the heart of the world, and the world shall be. And of those of you that will may go down into it. And suddenly the Ainur saw and suddenly the Ainur saw a far off light, as it were a cloud with a living heart of a flame. And they knew that this was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing, Ea, the world that is. Okay, so I caught up to where I was before. So let's keep going. Let's see, and where am I at? Excuse me, I'll just take a drink of water. Excuse me. So Ea, the world that is. Okay. Then it came to pass that the Ainur's some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world. But others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar and descended into it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their power should thenceforth be contained and bounded in the world. Excuse me, but to be within it forever until it is complete, so that they are its life and it is theirs. Excuse me. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. But when the Valar entered into Ea, they were at first astounded and at a loss, but on point to begin and yet unshaped, and it was dark. For the great music had been but the growth in the flowering of thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshowing. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and forsung, and they must achieve it. So began their great labors and wastes, unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea, there came to be that hour and that place where what was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. And in this work the great part was taken by Manwë and Aule and Ulmo. But Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it, if he might, to his own desires and purposes. And he kindled great fires. When therefore earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the other Valar, This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself. But Manwë was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor. And he called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down into the fields of Arda and aided Manwë, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and earth should wither ere it flowered. And Manwë said unto Melkor, This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own, wrongfully, for many others have labored here no less than thou. And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar. And for that time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions and did there what he would. But he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. Excuse me. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by love of the children of Iluvatar, for whom they hoped, they took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, safe only in majesty and splendor. Moreover, their shape comes of all their knowledge in the visible world, rather than of the world itself. And they needed not safe only as we use raiment. And yet we may be naked and suffer no loss of our being. Therefore the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and then even the Eldar cannot clearly perceive them, though they be present. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon them forms, some as of male and some as of female. For that difference of temper they had even from their beginning, and it is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice, even as with us male and female may be shown by the raiment, but is not made thereby. But the shapes wherein the great ones array themselves are not at all times like to the shapes of the kings and queens of the children of Iluvatar. For at times they may clothe themselves in their thought, made visible in the forms of majesty and dread. And the Valar drew unto them many companions, some less, some well nigh as great as themselves. And they labored together in the ordering of the earth and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked on the earth as powers visible, clad in the raiment of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see, and blissful, and that the earth was becoming a garden for their delight, for its turmoils were subdued. His envy grew, then greater within him, and he also took visible form, but because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible. And he descended upon Arda in power and majesty greater than any other of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea and has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces with a deadly cold. Thus became the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for the dominion of Arda. And of those tumults the elves know but little. For what has here been declared, is come from the Valar themselves, with whom the Eldali spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they were instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of the elves. Yet it is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth. For as surely as the Valar began a labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And yet this labor was not all in vain. And though nowhere and in no work was their will and purpose wholly fulfilled, and all things were in hue and shape other than the Valar had first intended, slowly nonetheless the earth was fashioned and made firm. And thus with the habitation of the children of Ilúvatar established at the last in the deeps of time and amidst the innumerable stars. Excuse me. Excuse me, let's see. Vala Quinta. Account of the Valar and Maiar according to the lore of Eldar. So in the beginning, Eru, the one who in the Elvish tongue is named Ilúvatar, made the Ainur of his thought, and they made a great music before him. In this music the world was begun, for Ilúvatar made visible the song of the Ainur, and they beheld it as a light in the darkness, and many among them became enamored of its beauty, and of its history which they saw beginning and unfolding as in a vision. Therefore Ilúvatar gave to their vision being, and set it amid the void, and the secret fire was sent to burn at the heart of the world, and it was called Ea. And I think with that, I'll go ahead and stop. And those who are watching it on the repeat, thanks so much for watching. Those who visited, thanks so much. And have a great one. Later.